Today on the Topping Show, Bud Light tweet is nearly as successful as their Dylan Mulvaney sponsorship. Vivek on Biden censorship gets 1.6 million views. Sportsball's Bud Light tweet gets nearly 4.2 million views, but only gets 289 likes. Ford expands their layoffs due to the UAW strike. Vivek GOP debate highlight on Ukraine goes viral. Chris Christie attempts to troll Donald Trump, but his pun falls flatter than a Bud Light. Toys R Us is coming back, well, kind of. Rivian lost $33,000 per EV sold in fiscal Q2. Wonder Group acquires Blue Apron, and Eli Lilly's drug is rejected by the FDA for the third time. All that much more on The Topping Show. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. Today's episode's Topping Show is sponsored by Topping Technologies. Topping Technologies is an IT value-added reseller and services company with a special proficiency in IT security. Heck, I see their founder at least twice a day. Gotta say he's quite handsome and brilliant. He's me, you see, that's the joke. If you're an IT leader or a business owner, you can reach the team at sales@toppingtechnologies.com. Also, for the month of October, we're giving away a free 37mm flare launcher with every purchase. Go to toppingtechnologies.com for additional information. Lastly, trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October, so if you could click that button, I'd greatly appreciate it. Now going on to the business part of the podcast, you have Ford laying off about 300 additional factory workers due to the ongoing UAW strike. Now this is after the UAW demanded a mere, just a small little, they just want a little bit of a wage increase of $80 to $100 billion over the course of a 4-year contract, which would be, in addition to having a 40% increase in their wages, they also wanted pensions back, which again was another contributing factor to why they went bankrupt subsequently. They also, not Ford specifically, but UAW was a contributing factor to why GM and Chrysler went bankrupt. Ford barely made it by the skin of their teeth. But nevertheless, they want a 40% wage increase. They want a 32-hour work week, but paid for 40 hours, and a myriad of other benefits that would have added up to value between $80 and $100 billion over the course of a 4-year contract, which is quite a pretty penny. That's quite literally more than the profits generated by the big three. So yes, it quite literally would bankrupt them. So it's not a surprise that a strike ensued. So now this particular strike at the Chicago assembly plant, which is news in and of itself that Chicago still has jobs. It was a rumor for years. I had to go to Snopes.com well, they're not that reputable. I had to do some extra digging to really make sure this news was authentic. And there are in fact still jobs in Chicago. I know I'm quite shocked myself, but nevertheless they do somehow exist. Now, this recent strike in the Chicago assembly plant was announced by UAW President Shawn Fain last Friday, and it has directly affected some of the operations at the separate Chicago stamping plant and the Lima engine plant. Now, you have the Ford spokesperson, Dan Barbosa. Well, Dan said, quote, "Our production system is highly interconnected, which means the UAW targeted strike strategy has knock-on efforts for facilities that are not directly targeted for work stoppage," unquote. Now, Barbosa also went on to further explain and say, quote, "These are not lockouts, these are layoffs and a consequence of the strike with the Chicago assembly plant because these 3 facilities must commence production of parts that would normally be shipped to Chicago assembly plant," unquote. So in terms of effectiveness, the UAW has been quite strategic. They have about $820 million to pay their people not to work for the strike. Each worker, I believe, gets, according to latest articles, they get about $500 per week to stand around with the picket sign for the protest. So they have quite a long ramp-up period. They can sustain the strike for quite some time. And in terms of kneecapping the big three, talking about Union, Chicago, kneecapping, I almost thought this was a better report about the Chicago mob. Thankfully, Chicago's, since then, they're very clean, ethical, nothing precarious goes on there. Haha, see that's a joke. Times may have changed, but not so much culture. But nevertheless, the UAW has brilliantly come out with a plan where they can just kneecap the big three by just taking a couple workers off the production line. So instead of the UAW having to pay every single member to strike, which again would be $500 per member per week, well, if they just remove a couple members from the factories are effectively kneecapped because, unfortunately, I guess the big three don't have the business decision to cross-train employees. So one of the best examples being the Ford Bronco plant. Ford Bronco plant was one of the first ones that was affected by this strike by the UAW. The UAW decided to take employees away from, I believe, the paint and the final assembly parts of the factory. And without those, you obviously can't finish the vehicle. Now, on the opposite side, in terms of what's the strengths of the big three right now, when was the last time you needed to buy a car? When was the last time you wanted to buy a car by the big three? It's one of those things where we have record high loan interest rates, as well as economic uncertainty. Most people I know are just trying to make their dollar stretch a little bit thinner, and they're just driving their current vehicles. They're not going out and they want to pay for a new vehicle, which the price of a new vehicle in North America is already more expensive than the price of a new Tesla. So think about that for a second. Tesla was able to get their costs that much lower, and also Tesla isn't affected by the UAW. Quite the opposite. They don't have unionized workers. They have workers who are incentivized by stock to work like hell, which I would argue is a much better incentive, which we'll see if the UAW wants that as a trade-off. I haven't seen that, and again, there's proposals going back and forth literally every minute of the day as it goes by for the strike, but I haven't seen that yet. Be interested in seeing what goes on from there, but unfortunately it sounds like there are more layoffs, and hopefully at the end of the day they'll be able to get their jobs back, or perhaps they'll be able to find gainful employment at another more profitable venture, such as, let's see, maybe a Toyota, a Honda, what else? Tesla, Mercedes, Kia. There's a lot of options out there. But nevertheless, it'll be interesting to see how this affects the strikes and the ongoing negotiations. It'll be interesting to see if anyone comes out on top, or if they think it's somehow come together for a win-win. It'll be interesting to see, but as I always say, time shall tell. Thank you everyone for taking the time to tune in today. I know it's ambitious, but we're trying to get to 4,000 subscribers by the end of October, so if you can click that button, I would greatly appreciate it. Also, the additional comments as well as the likes are greatly appreciated, as I really do like the feedback. I try to respond to all the comments when I can, and even if it's harsh, I appreciate the critique, because that's how I make the show better and better. We're continually trying to examine and test new software capabilities so that we can do the picture-in-picture. So when I'm referencing some of these clips, you'll be able to see them in real time. If you have suggestions, I would greatly appreciate it. I tried a couple over the weekend, and again, unfortunately, they just didn't pan out. And I don't know if it's because I'm currently using the 4K Razer Kaizen USB web camera and OBS software, then a little USB mic. So if you have and for some reason the picture-in-picture won't work. It'll only use one or the other. So let me know if you have suggestions. I really appreciate it, because I do want to make the show better and better so we can all have a good time, so to say. Also, don't forget to take the time to tell your family, tell your friends, tell your coworkers, heck, tell your enemies, tell anyone and everyone. Just stay safe and fight the good fight.